a quiz. Unlike Keith, I don't have any chocolates to throw out. However, if you get an answer right, feel free to have 1, 2 or 5 pastries from the back. Otherwise, I'm going to be eating a lot. So what do we do? What do we do between 12 and 20 times per minute? Oh, well, so many pastries to be eaten. Off you go. What has an average volume of 0.5 litres? Your lungs don't have an average volume of 0.5 litres unless you have some serious asthma condition or lungs. It is the volume of an unforced normal breath, also known as your tidal volume. What contains 78% nitrogen, 16.4% oxygen and 4.4% carbon dioxide? Anyone who said air, I'm afraid you're wrong. Philippa? Your breath, more specific. Your outward exhaled breath. Yes. Your inhaled breath, because I know you're all wondering, is 21% oxygen and 0.04% carbon dioxide. I'm sure you're all fascinated. Finally, what has an average capacity of 6 litres? Think back to previous answer, lungs, absolutely. Although the largest measured lung capacity, so average 6, the largest measured lung capacity was 11.68 litres. And that was, I think, a Lieutenant Colonel, Peter Reid. I may have got his rank wrong, for which I apologise. Pete Reid, who was also an Olympic athlete, I believe. Largest measured lungs, 11.68. There you go. We are going to come back to that. So remember your biology lesson. But first, we're going to look at our reading from Ezekiel 37. Now, Ezekiel was a prophet, and God spoke to Ezekiel, showing him his plans and his desires for his people. And one of these encounters with God is recorded in our reading today. And it's a really vivid depiction. The passage uses every single one of our senses to pick us up from where we are and drop us into the very heart of what is going on. When you heard the reading, I don't know about you, but I can almost taste the dry dust of the valley. I can feel the heat of the air. I can see the bleached white, dry bones, contrasting with the dark brown, dusty earth. And then I can hear the rushing of the breath of God, bringing life to those dead bones. It's an amazing, vivid depiction. And in this encounter, God assigns Ezekiel an impossible task. He is to prophesy to the dead. And not only to the dead, but to the very long dead. The dead that had passed fully through decomposition, which I'm not going to describe, to become dry bones. And not only to prophesy to them, but to bring them to life. But Ezekiel knew that it wasn't in his power or his skill or even his own breath that he was to do this. But it was in the power of God. It was in the breath of God. And so this is the charge that God had for Ezekiel, to bring life to the dead. And it is the charge that Jesus had for his disciples, to bring life to the dead. And it is the charge that the Holy Spirit has for us, to prophesy to those who are dead in their separation from God, and to allow the breath of God to bring them to abundant life. So back to our biology lesson. What are the two most important parts of breathing? I would have placed bets that Steve and Casey would get there first. Breathing in and breathing out. Those are the most important, the two most important parts of breathing in. And so I'm going to ask you throughout this talk to do this with me. Breathe in and breathe out. Now, there's a reason those are the two most important parts, because I have a challenge for you. Now, if you are in good health, this is the health warning that comes before any kind of TV programs now. If you are in good health and you're in this half of the church, For the next few moments, until I tell you otherwise, I want you just to breathe in. This half of the church and everyone up in the gallery, again, if you are in good health and feel able to, for the next few moments, until I tell you otherwise, only breathe out. Okay, so only breathing in, only breathing out. Please do take it away. I'm just going to keep breathing in and out, because if I pass out at the front, we won't get anywhere. So let me know if you're struggling, and I'm just going to watch any red faces appear or people slumping over. If someone does slump over near you, just remind them to do the opposite of what they've just been doing. I'm hoping, it's hard to tell, I can't see any bulgy eyes, but it's very difficult just to do one of those. Jeremy's struggling, he's doing very well, I can see. He's going to explode in a minute. No one's passed out, so that's good. Go back to the usual repetitive cycle, breathe in, breathe out. We'll just do it together to remind ourselves. Breathe in and breathe out. Much better. Now, what I think you'll probably have found, it's impossible to just do one of those things. If all we did was breathe in, our lungs would expand to total capacity until they could stretch no more. We would have plenty of oxygen flying around our lungs, but we would be failing to get rid of any carbon dioxide. If all we did was breathe in, our lungs would fail to stretch any further. Our bodies would effectively stall. We would quite quickly die. If all we did was breathe out, our lungs would collapse to total emptiness until they could compress no more. We would have expelled quite a lot of carbon dioxide, but we would not be receiving any fresh oxygen. If all we did was breathe out, our lungs would fail. Our bodies would effectively stall. We would quite quickly die. To survive, we must continually breathe in and breathe out. We must persistently do both. Breathe in and breathe out. Even when we are putting our bodies through stress or strain, such as exercise, going for a walk, running for a bus, completing a marathon or an epic bike ride, we must do both. Neither one is greater or more important. We must breathe in and breathe out. There is also no situation where we can decide and declare this situation just calls for breathing in, or conversely, this situation just calls for breathing out. Always, at every time, both must be done if we are to survive and live. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. Now, the reason I've been talking about biology lessons for a little while is I think that breathing is a useful analogy for the life, mission, and growth of the church. We must breathe in. We must take in the breath of God, like the dry bones in the desert. We take in the breath of God. We build our faith. We nurture each other. We identify our gifts, talents, and skills given by God. We learn about God's character. We are inspired and empowered, like we've been looking at in our current series. We are challenged and corrected. We learn to let God more deeply into our lives. But if all we do is breathe in, our air becomes stagnant, our bodies stall, our spirits fail. We become the dry bones on the desert floor among the dust. We breathe in so that we can breathe out. And so we must also breathe out. We are released by the breath of God to bring and show life to others. We share our stories, our testimonies of God's work in our lives. We invest in the communities that God has placed us in. We share the good news of God's love. We grow in service to others. We release others from captivity. We speak out against injustice. We stand for what is right. We bring light into the darkness. We go. We prophesy like Ezekiel in the power of God. But if all we do is breathe out, our lungs quickly become empty, our bodies stall, our spirits fail, we dry up and once again become bones on the desert floor among the dust. To breathe out, we must breathe in. To breathe in, we must breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Persistently, consistently, repeatedly, breathe in. And breathe out. Empowered, energized, and encouraged by the breath of life. The breath of life that powered Ezekiel. The breath of life that brought life to the dry bones in the desert. The breath of life that only comes from the breath of God.